Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Change Book Podcast. This is the podcast that highlights our amazing authors in the Change Book. And one thing I want to say this morning is if you don't know it, we are in over 30 countries. So it's getting big. We've got amazing authors. And today we have an amazing man join us who is an author in our book. And I want to welcome Steve Warmer. How are you?
Good morning, Nicole. So good to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much. Now, I am going to mention that Steve and I tried this once before, and I was very unhappy with the results. And one thing we want to do is we really want to highlight our authors, and Steve is no exception. He has an amazing story. He's an amazing guy, and I'm really, really happy you're here. So thank you for agreeing to redo this.
My honor, for sure. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Now, one of the questions I'm always curious about is why did you pick the Change Book?
Oh my goodness. Count the ways, right? It's interesting because I was talking to one of my coaches a few months ago, and she said to me, I forgot even what we were coaching about at the time. And she said, I think you have your next book in you, because I'd written my first one a couple years ago. And like a lot of us these days, I've got so much going on, so little bandwidth. And when she said that, I was like, I didn't say this exactly like this, but I was like, I don't want to talk about that today. I'm not paying you to coach about that today, was kind of my heart. And, but what the Lord knew that I didn't know was I certainly could contribute a chapter. And so when I learned about the heartbeat behind the series, empowerment insights into self-empowerment, I was like, that's interesting. And then I learned a little more about Jim Britt and Jim Lutz. And I was like, okay, this is really credible. And then, Les Brown's done the forward. And of course, I'm a public speaker and wanting to, getting to that more and more. And I was like, oh my gosh, you got Les Brown as the forward. So just the credibility of all those involved. And then it just so happened that I had a friend. I didn't know this until I was about this close to making my decision to get involved with the project, that I have a friend that actually wrote a chapter in the last edition, volume 21. So it was just like everything came together.
Good, good. I'm glad that came together, and I'm glad you're here. And I couldn't agree with you more about the Jim and Jim. They really are amazing. I had the opportunity to meet Jim Lutz last week, and what you see is what you get. That man wants to help us, wants to train us, wants success for us as much as he has for himself. He's got so much integrity. So I am glad you're here.
Oh, me too.
Good. So I know the book isn't in print yet, so I know we haven't been able to read it. Can you talk a little bit about your chapter?
So my chapter tells a little bit of my life, some trials that I went through, what I learned from them, and some of those trials, like all of us, they're intense. We all have those seasons of life, right? Life is definitely a roller coaster. But what I try to convey, in addition to the trials, is there are breakthroughs on the way. And that's what we all want, right? We all want those breakthroughs in life, and those passions that we have, and that fire that's inside of us. We want to see some of those things come to fruition in our lives. But I have found there's a process to that, and sometimes we get stuck. And so, in essence, to answer your question, is my chapter was called "Bridging the Gap," moving from trials to breakthroughs, and we just need some momentum. And I developed 8 steps to help you start to get across that bridge towards your breakthroughs. So that's what my chapter is about.
That is awesome. And, when I got your bio, one of the things that really stood out to me, and this is very important in my life, is you work with integrity, strength, and compassion. And I sometimes feel like we live in a world that isn't quite as compassionate as I would like to see. Has that just been your life's work? How did you come to understand those important aspects of coaching?
Well, I would certainly say people that knew me the first 35, 40 years of my life, compassion wouldn't be the first adjective they would use. But, I think a combination of things tend to soften your heart if you let it. And that's been true with me. I think becoming a dad later in life has softened my heart. Certainly, the Lord has softened my heart. You know what? I need compassion in my life. So who am I to withhold it from someone else? I mean, you don't have to look very far in this crazy world right now. We all need a lot more compassion and encouragement. And so I want to contribute what I can to that cause. I want to make a difference. I want to be a light in what's otherwise a lot of places, a dark world right now.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that's so important for me with compassion is when I feel that compassion, I don't feel any need to judge any longer. I don't feel a need to condemn. I just understand that for the most part, they've got their own ideas, their own ways. And, why do we need to judge everybody? Have you ever felt that way?
That's interesting. You said that. Soon as you started talking about judging, I thought of a quote that Mother Teresa said,
Ooh,
"If you spend all your time judging people, you'll have no time left to love them." I was just like, "Oh, wow, that one cuts right to the heart, right?"
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I find myself, and this applies to me for sure, but I think it applies to everybody. It's like we come to these snap judgments even when we're people that in general think we're not judgmental, but I think we all do it internally and it comes out in the words we speak to people. And I think we all have to learn to ask better questions. Help me understand. And then really listen to understand, not to respond. And then be good at marinating on that answer that they give us. And then, did I hear you right? This is what I heard you said? Am I correct? Really helping them to see that you're in there, you care, you want to make sure they they feel like they are heard and understood by you. And then ask your follow-up question after you thoroughly understood the first answer that they've given you. So I think we all can learn from asking more and better follow-up questions.
And I couldn't agree with you more because what I've found in my past is I would listen to answer. I wouldn't listen to hear. And if you don't listen to hear, there's no use in even asking the question. And so honestly, having been on Clubhouse for years and then doing podcasts, I have trained myself, I guess, to listen very closely to people's words. And the beautiful thing is it has in my life now, I can listen a lot more closely. And, sometimes I look back and I'm like, man, I really didn't know how to listen. I was very unfair at times with people because I was listening to respond, not to understand.
I think we've certainly all done that, but we're all a work in progress, so there's hope, right?
That's what I tell people. I'm working on myself till the day I leave this earth. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And Steve, I know what you and I have something in common, and we are very passionate about forgiveness. Can you tell me about where that came from with you, how you feel about that, and how you incorporate that into your coaching and life?
Like a lot of us, I've been given a lot of situations in life where I've been put in those situations where, okay, I have a choice. Am I going to forgive or am I going to be bitter? And I have not always chosen the right path. But I forgot who quoted it, but I'm sure you know this quote is unforgiveness is like drinking a spoonful of poison and expecting the other person to die. And it's like, how's that going for you? It just doesn't work. And we're being eat up on the inside with this bitterness and unforgiveness. And really, we're not going to heal at all until we take that first gigantic step of forgiveness. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's one of the hardest things to do, especially depending on the incident. And especially when it's someone that you really love and trust and are close to. That's extremely hard. But it is commanded of us, but it's also very doable if our heart wants to do it. I've always said there's a huge difference in saying, drawing a line in the sand. And you and I were talking about this a little bit backstage. Drawing that line in the sand, said, I will never, ever, ever forgive. I didn't do anything wrong. And then saying, you know what, this is really hard. I need some help. Can you help me forgive? I want to start taking the steps, but I don't know how. You see, there's a huge difference there in the hard approach. And I'd like to think that more times than not now, it's still hard, but that I want to forgive. I want to take those steps towards that.
I love that. I love that. And is that one of the first things you teach your clients or talk about with your clients?
Well, in our nonprofit, we have several teachings, and forgiveness is certainly a cornerstone of what we teach. And yeah, matter of fact, it's interesting because you really can't. I mean, you could continue on in the workshop, but you're not going to heal without getting that piece solidified in your life. So yeah, it's definitely a cornerstone without a doubt.
Good, good. And one of the things we also talked about backstage was how lack of forgiveness can cause dis-ease. So dis-ease with your body. Can you speak to that for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the physical things that it can do to your body, but I know it causes anxiousness. I
Mhm.
know it can cause high blood pressure. I know it can consume your thoughts. And I don't know about you, Nicole. I guess I'm just not intelligent enough, but I think this still applies to everybody. I can only think of one dominant thought at a time. So if I've got unforgiveness on my mind, that's going to be what dominates my thinking and therefore my actions. And even if the unforgiveness is aimed at somebody that's 1,000 miles away, the unfortunate part is if that's what I'm consumed with, the people closest to me, my family, my closest friends, those that I work with, that circle, they're gonna be impacted by my unforgiveness too. So whatever it is, unforgiveness, bitterness, anxiety, worry, that's going to be our dominant thought. However, if I choose gratitude, that's going to push all the other stuff out. Now we got to continue to choose it. And maybe that's a concept that might be new to some listening today, but it's an emotion, but it is a choice that we have to make on a consistent basis. And it's like everything else, we have to practice it, and it's a work in progress.
Absolutely. And, just speaking for me, talking about being at dis-ease with your body or disease, when I was going through my divorce before I had practiced forgiveness, you talk about a mess. You talk about anxiety and you talk about bitterness and so many things like that. And I was suffering from that and just kind of doing things every day on autopilot, things that, I'm like, okay, I have to take one kid here and one kid there. But what I started noticing is my hair was falling out and I would
Mm,
scratch my skin until I bled. So I am an
wow.
example of someone who, because I hadn't practiced forgiveness, I was getting sick. I was getting really, really sick. And when you're going through all that, for me, I was tired. I was cranky. I snapped at my family. Like you said, your family around you kind of takes the brunt. And so I am a firm believer that whatever is in you, if you don't release it and get it out of you, it is going to wreak havoc with your body.
That's right. Wow.
Absolutely. So that, that's just one quick story. And luckily I still have some. So as you can see, I practice forgiveness. So
There you go.
yeah, absolutely. And I know it said you have got some proof. You have 8 steps for, can you give us just a glimpse into that world? I know you don't want to reveal everything, but how did you come to find these 8 steps?
The 8 steps were really just practical things that I have been blessed to discover through my trials in my life. Like I said, I've had many. Like everybody listening, we've all had trials. And interesting enough, choosing gratitude is step number one. So I don't want to duplicate what we were just talking about, but choosing gratitude is one of the steps. I think another one that's fascinating to me is processing your unprocessed emotions. Of certainly unforgiveness is one of those. And if you can see this glass of water, it's about half full right now. But most of us, by the time we're 15, 16 years old, we've had a series of events that is filled. If we said the glass was our heart and the water was life's pain, then most of us 15, 16-year-olds have a heart full of pain. And the problem with that is life's going to keep coming at you. We know that. So what are we going to do with that pain? We've got to find a way to empty the glass and fill it up with healthy things. But we got to have some tools to do that. So processing your unprocessed emotions, I've got a system for that. That our nonprofit has shown how to do that as well. And I think, just to give you another one, and this is one I'm certainly working on right now, is eliminating or reducing, starting with reducing limited mindset. I think I just heard a week or two ago, and this is not a knock on parenting necessarily at all, but the average child, by the time he's 18 years old, has heard the word no. And some of that's legit. Don't touch the stove, don't run out in front of traffic. Those things are good no's, right? But they've heard no 148,000 times.
How is that?
And
I would say, how is it possible? But as I see people, that old mentality, children are made to be seen and not heard. I still think there's a little bit of conditioning around that, but that's a huge number.
Yeah. So it's no wonder that some of us, or a lot of us, have some limited mindsets that we need to break through, and we need to hear yes. We need to hear some more encouragement to those things that are on our heart that we want to do.
Yeah, that's very true. And I remember with my daughters, and I told them, I said, you're not going to like me a lot of the time. I said, because I do have to make decisions that will keep you alive. I said, so you're not going to like it, but tell me why you should, and we'll see if we can meet, or tell me why you shouldn't. I'll tell you why I can't let you do that. So, it wasn't just a no. I wanted to let them at least express why they felt they should be able to do it. And so maybe my no's were just 130,000.
But I love that, because you are opening dialogue with your child. Now, when they're younger, you're not going to be able to do that if they're heading towards the street, or if they're about to, put their finger in the wall socket or whatever. But I love that as they got older, you were open to that dialogue, which I'm sure made them feel respected. But at the end of the day, you were still the parent, and you had to, tell them why the no was still no.
Yeah, exactly. And I had two girls that were born in September, so they were like a year ahead of everyone. Our cutoff date in Arizona was like August 31st. And so when they turned 18, still in high school, I'm like, look, I know you're still in high school, but you're technically an adult. Don't do anything now, because I can't get you out of trouble.
That's right. Exactly.
So I was very candid with mine and opened it up, but that is a phenomenally high number. And, no can be positive, but just a blunt no can really have a conditioning effect on children. Do you believe that to be so?
I did. Well, let me go back a step, because when I first heard that number, I was astounded too. And it's kind of like when you buy a car and nobody else has that color or that car, and then you drive it off the lot and you see it everywhere. It's like I heard that number a couple of weeks ago. Now I've heard it like 4 or 5 times. It's like, okay, there's truth to the number. But yeah, I do think it has a compounding effect on children. There's no doubt about it. And the choices they make and the way they live. Yeah, it's definitely a barrier to be broken through.
Good. I love that. I love that advice. Now, another thing that I see on your bio is you're a Maxwell certified speaker, coach, and trainer. That's pretty impressive. Can you tell us about that?
I've wanted to do that for a few years now. One of my coaches is a Maxwell coach, and I was blessed back in April to be able to invest with them, and the network's been great. I'm on a matter of fact, I'm on a group coaching call right now with a Maxwell, not right now, obviously, but for 6 weeks. and it has to do with a project that about I'd say 45 or 50 Maxwell folks have joined in with a special program. So getting to meet new people, build relationships, possibly do interview swaps with them. I think you and I were talking about that a little bit. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been great.
Good, 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 good. When you speak, what does that feel like getting on stage in front of, many people? Was it intimidating at first, or do you just feel like I belong here?
Well, it's still a work in progress, Nicole. I mean, I'm a pastor, so I do speak every week, but I will say it's fascinating to me the different nuances of the crafting of the message of a sermon versus a keynote. The delivery, obviously, if a sermon, you might be delivering that depending on how often, 48 times a year to 60, depending on how your church has services. And when you do a keynote, you might be doing that keynote over and over again until you develop a second one and a third one, and that's all memorized. Your movements are choreographed. There's some techniques on trying to emphasize a certain point. I'm not going to go into all that right now. Your audience probably knows a lot of that, but it's just very different. But still, at the end of the day, you're wanting to connect and add value to whoever's listening to you, and I love doing that. So yeah, it's been
Good.
a joy.
And, just talking to you, I can see where you would be very well received. So, though, that's wonderful. And one of the things I always like to talk about with a coach is why coaches need coached to be coached. Because I have, I call myself a guide or a mentor, but I do use coach as well. But I have coaches. What do you think about that?
Oh my goodness, where to start? Well, for me personally, I'm a processor. So that helps. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking would be my next best steps on said goal. How do you feel? What's been your experience? That helps me. Certainly the accountability of next steps and deadlines. I think that's certainly invaluable. Um, just having somebody in your corner that's cheering you on, that's not going to let you, back to the accountability, not going to let you get off the road too far of your goals that you've communicated to them. I mean, you're paying them to help you stay on track. And
Right.
so I will say this, and this is on topic, but maybe a little off topic. I think, because I mentioned the word accountability a couple times in there, I think attachment, if we had a whiteboard, attachment is greater than accountability. I think if we really thought that through, most of us don't really enjoy being accountable just for accountability purposes. But if I trust the person, if that person is poured into me, they're an encouragement to me, they have my best interest at heart, I'm going to be much more inclined to be accountable to them because there's a bond, there's a friendship, well, maybe friendship's not the right word if they're the coach, but there's an attachment, there's a trust between the coach and the client. Then I'm going to naturally be accountable to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with each person it would be different, but as we have our coaches and pick our coaches, the only reason we would confide in them is because we feel that comfort level, or we feel that they have our best interest at heart. And those are the people I want to be aligned with, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That it's actually one of the steps in the 8 steps is your circle does matter.
Oh, greatly, greatly. And isn't there a saying that you are a product of, is it the 3 or the 5 people that you hang around with?
Yeah, I never get that number right either, but it's
Yeah,
it's a
I
hand
think
it's
it's an
a
odd
handful, right?
number. It could be 3,
Yeah.
5, 7, I don't
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
when you think about it, there's a lot of truth to that, because I've gone over, we always change, we always morph, and I've gone through a lot of circles. And as I've changed, maybe we don't resonate anymore. And so as we continue becoming, I'm not going to hang around with the people I did, when I was waiting tables, because I have nothing in common now. And I'm not going to hang around maybe with the people when I ran a pageant for many, many years, executive director of a pageant. I don't do that anymore. So I've changed again. So I always try to assess my circle, you know, and I think people in our circle should learn from us and we should learn from them. Do you agree with that?
See, I love that. And kind of an illustration that comes to mind as you're saying that is you still care for those people that you worked with back in those former jobs. Maybe you have an occasional contact with them, or you probably don't share a meal with them or have frequent calls with them, like you said, because your circle has changed. So it's there's some people moving out of your circle, not in a confrontational way, but
Right.
just organically it's happening. But you're intentional, and I love that. You're intentional about looking at the landscape and saying, hey, who can I next bring in? I love that. I love that approach.
Good, 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 good. And, I know we're almost at the end here, but the thing I think I'm most impressed with, Steve, is you have been married for 28 years. What is your secret?
Oh my goodness. I think admitting that most of the time it's my fault.
It's me. It's me.
Right. And most of the time it is.
But,
Um,
that takes a big person to admit that. So, thank you for being candid with us.
Well, and that took years too. But it goes back to that gratitude thing, right? Too. It's like every day I thank the Lord for Rebecca. She does a lot for our family. She's been my best friend. Those are hard to find, and we get to do life together. We get to parent together. We get to share dreams together. We get to work together. So I mean, every marriage takes work and is hard. But if you can be grateful, it'll keep it grounded for sure.
I love that. I love that. And for our audience, I have put all of Steve's links in here. I would say reach out, connect with him. But I want you to leave us like with just a little nugget that we can take with us throughout the day and just put it in our heart. What would that be for you, Steve?
Any nugget.
Yeah. Motivate us, inspire us.
I would say that when I look back at my life, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm 55, but I still feel like, Lord willing, I got a lot of life left, a lot of things to accomplish. But when I look back, a lot of really exciting things have happened after I reached 40 years old. And so I know it's easy in those middle ages to get complacent and put your dreams on the back burner. Maybe some of that's financially related. Maybe that's just life and raising kids and all that. I get all that. But I think a lot of it, if we're honest, there's fear. There's fear of failure. There's fear of success. That one we don't talk about it a lot, but it's there. And I just want to encourage you that hope is still alive. Miracles are still done. Never give up on your God-given dream. Never stop pursuing it. And there's help for you. But you have to take some steps. Yeah, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said, you don't have to see the entire staircase. You do need to take one step, however. And so I just want to encourage you, just because you're, 35, 40, whatever age, it's not too late. As long as you got air in your lungs, it's never too late. Hope is alive for sure.
I love that. And I think that is a beautiful way to end that. So I want to thank you for being a part of the Change Book. I want to thank you for being on the Change Book podcast. And this has been a beautiful interview. You are very inspiring, and I can feel just an openness with you. So I would encourage any of our audience to please reach out to Steve. He has started my Monday off perfectly. So Steve, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Nicole, you always make it easy. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I am Nicole Harvick, the host of the Change Book podcast. I will be back next Monday with another amazing author. So thank you for being here. Be sure to reach out to Steve. Thank you, everyone.